Good afternoon, everybody. Really sweet of you to be online again. So the subject of the talk now is more theoretical. Question really being, what is Zen? What is Zen? Who are the most important Zen masters? What is the famous stories related to them? So this talk will be much less practical than the one of this morning, which, as you noticed, was mostly dedicated how to practice. So we must be very careful when we speak about spirituality. When we ask the question, what is Zen? We must all agree that, first of all, Zen is a word. Okay? Zen is not something. Zen is a word which defines something. So how did we get to that word Zen? Eventually, you know that all forms of Buddhism, and I will talk a little bit later about some nuances on that term of Buddhism, are related originally to the experience of the Buddha Shakyamuni. So in this time, 2,500 years ago, people would ask, because the Buddha was very famous. He was known and from a good family, which was the family of the king of Nepalese Terai. When we asked the Buddha what he was practicing, what is your practice? He would answer dhyana. Okay? Then everybody repeated it. He practices dhyana, he practices dhyana, he practices dhyana. Then, obviously, a lot of people misinterpreted it. But we'll see that after. Understand that the essence of Buddhism I'm representing is the transmitted Buddhism. Okay? I did not learn anything of Buddhism in books. I didn't condition my mind to be Buddhist. I strictly made the exact same experience than the Buddha Shakyamuni himself. When the Buddha Shakyamuni arrived at the end of his life, he decided to transmit the Dharma, to transmit all his attributes and the responsibility of the community to his prime disciple, Mahakashyapa. Mahakashyapa then, when he had finished his work, transmitted to Ananda, which was the cousin of the Buddha, and advised Ananda to transmit in the future to a guy who would come, and his name would be Shonawashu. So understand that the Buddhism from the one I am the depository is transmitted Buddhism. Shakyamuni transmitted to Mahakashyapa, Mahakashyapa transmitted to Ananda, Ananda transmitted to Shonawashu, and so on, so on, so on, so on. Okay? Until a person like me. I'm not the only one. Okay? So look, at the beginning, Buddhism, or the practice of the Buddha, dhyana, was practiced in India. Okay? And then, one good day, Bodhidharma decided to go all the way to China to promote this form of practice. Bodhidharma was an Indian guy. He was not speaking Chinese. Okay? So when he arrived in the mountains of China, where he founded the temple of Shaolin, Shaolin temple is a Zen temple, a very traditional Zen temple. And by the way, if you want to be accepted in Shaolin temple, you need the recommendation of a Zen master. This is their tradition. So when he arrived in China, not speaking Chinese, he couldn't be accepted in the monastery of Shaolin, which was already existing. So he decided to sit next to the entrance of the temple in a little cave which was just next to it. Because it was cold, eventually he decided to sit and face the wall so that he wouldn't take eventually the cold wind in his face. And people would ask him, what do you practice? What do you practice? They would ask to Bodhidharma, what you practice? And he would answer, I practice dhyana. The Chinese, eventually not able to say D, started to say to each other, Jhana, 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 Jhana. This guy practices Jhana, Jhana, and transliteration of the word Dhyana became Chana in China, and eventually Chan. So the same practice that the Buddha was promoting, practicing himself, teaching to his disciple, which was called dhyana, became, in China, became Chan. And the story goes, in China, masters transmitted to disciples. Eventually, the tree of the transmission got more and more broad. Eventually, a master would transmit to many disciples, and so the different branches of Buddhism started. Already at the when the Buddha died, 18 different sects said they were depository of the teaching of the Buddha. But truly, the Buddha transmitted his authority only to Mahakashyapa. 700 years after Bodhidharma, there is this guy in Japan called Eihei Dogen, which is absolutely not convinced by the teaching, the formal teaching of Buddhism in Japan. Everybody around him is a teacher, everybody teaches different forms of Buddhism, and the teaching themselves became obscure and unclear. And for him, as a Japanese, was very important to be himself too the depository of that transmission. He could do as much courses, as much school, and go and see as much as professor as he wanted. That was not for him having the value of receiving the transmission. So he decided, whenever he was young, and that the travel to China was really dangerous, to cross the ocean and to walk through China in the quest of the transmission. Eventually arrived at a certain point to a famous temple where the master Nyojo was teaching. He discovered that that temple because he got shocked by a discussion he had with an old person on the market. This old person was drying mushrooms and was pretty old, and Dogen asked him, but who are you? Because he was looking like a monk. Who are you? Oh, I am the cook of that temple. And Dogen asked, but you are really old. Why is it your task to be under the sun drying these mushrooms? And this guy answered simply, because I am here. For Dogen, this was a shock. He could feel in the energy of that person the direct transmission of what was the Dharma. He had too much the habit of universities and schools and complicated teachings. So he asked the guy, which temple is it? And eventually they walked back together to that temple. Then he discovered Nyojo and had a long time of teaching with him. I spare you of all the details. But then, after a certain moment, Dogen clearly said to his master Nyojo, from which he had received a great teaching, and with whom he had tremendous experiences. One is famous, because the subject of this afternoon is the famous stories. At a certain point, Dogen is practicing in the dojo, very deeply. The practice was very intense, and still today, when you go in a Zen retreat in a temple, the practice is intense. You wake up very early, go to sleep very, very late on the evening, and most of the day is dedicated to Zazen, eventually 8 hours a day, which is a lot. And so he's really absorbed in his meditation, really concentrated. And Nyojo pass with the Kyosaku. Maybe some of you know or have been heard that Zen monks eventually kick each other with a stick to awaken the mind, to awaken the focus, or to release tensions also. And that next to Dogen, there is another monk who's sleeping. Okay? And Dogen keeps focusing on his own posture, not being disturbed by his neighbor who's sleeping. Whenever he eventually is a little, he thinks it's weird. And Nyojo passes with the stick, give traditional kicks to the monks who ask for it, and when he sees the neighbor of Dogen sleeping, he takes out one of his shoes and starts to smash the face of the sleeping monk. This was a huge shock for Dogen, and Dogen at this moment made what we call an out-of-body experience. He got vanished out of his physical envelope and eventually discovered another realm, like a dream or like an astral travel, something like this. He got so shocked that his subtle vehicle got popped out of his body. When the experience finished and he found himself back in his body, in Zazen, he decided to go and talk to Nyojo about it. And he said to Master Nyojo, I think, Master, that I understood what you mean about abandoning body and spirit. This is what we must do. We must abandon body and spirit. And he explained his experience, his out-of-body experience. In Japanese, we say that Shinjin Datsuraku. That's what Dogen said to Nyojo. Shinjin Datsuraku. I got it. It's Shinjin Datsuraku. And Nyojo answered, Datsuraku Shinjin. That's what we must do. We must abandon the fact of abandoning our body. As if Dogen had discovered an experience of disintegration of the self, and to balance it, Master Nyojo told him we must integrate the self in our practice. This is a good story. And then the story goes on, but Dogen is stressed by time because his original project is not to stay in China with Nyojo. He wants to bring the transmission back to Japan, to cease with the different sect fights. You had the warrior monks, these monks, the magician monks, any kind of different monks, and was generally leading to some civilian wars and the time of the different warlords and shogun. So he was hoping that bringing what he was considering as being the true Dharma, the transmission, the official certified transmission of the Dharma to Japan, he will bring peace. Because Dogen was a really, really, really sweet person. Arriving back in Japan, people ask him, so, what did you learn in China? And he said, I learned Chan, but for the Japanese to say Ch is difficult. That's more a Chinese thing. So Chan became Zen. For the Japanese, it's more easy to say Zen. So understand. At the beginning, it was called Dhyana, and just because of the oral transmission, became Chana, then Chan, because it was more easy, and because of the oral transmission from China to Japan, it became Zen. And it stayed Zen in Occident today. Okay? So Zen is a word referring to the same exact practice that the Buddha was claiming to practice. Understand? It is not something different or specific. Now, some people will argue that the Buddha was practicing Vipassana. I will agree with that. I personally believe that Zazen is an evolution of Vipassana because the practice and the posture is more integrative of body and mind. So, I need to make a little break. What I'm going to say in the different talks who are going to come may shock my friends Buddhists. Okay? Since the teaching I received come exclusively from oral transmission from my own master and my experience of the depths of Zazen, which are pretty deep, I may have been in contact with information that are not the academic, how do you say that, consensus of Buddhism. So look, Dhyana, Jhana, Zen arrived in Europe and in the Occidental world, and still it's called Zen. So did you hear me saying anywhere that this was Buddhism? No. Zen is not Buddhism. You've certainly all seen, even if it's apparented to it, okay? We must be compassionate. Buddhism is certainly a term that has been invented by a Christian monk or missionary that was interested by practice, and when he came back to Occident, they say, yeah, they do some kind of thing that they try to be like to do the same thing like the Buddha, so we called that Buddhism. But the true word is Dhyana, Jhana, or Zen. Buddhism is an Occidental interpretation. And since eventually Christian missionaries were avid of books, they started to believe that Buddhism, because of the Christian monks, was something you would learn in the books. It has never been the case, okay? But be sure with that warning. I may say things that can shock my brother Buddhists. And it's actually the goal of my talks today. I don't want to lie or invent stories towards the teaching I have received from soul to soul, from master to disciple. Okay, good. So you understand that. So what means dhyana? Eventually that could be an interesting question. What means dhyana? Literally, dhyana means absorption. The fact that you are going to be absorbed by the practice. Understand? Meditation is a way to translate for the people to eventually understand it better. What is this absorption? The absorption is an iteration of yourself. In the mathematics, you know, chaotic mathematics, you take a formula and you play it and play it and play it and play it, changing the level of a resolution of it. So Zen is an iteration. Zazen is the fact to iterate yourself in a seated posture. Meditation is the fact that you will iterate yourself to your core. Understand? So after that, we said that dhyana was a meditation, but primarily it is absorption, because there is many forms of meditation where the idea is absolutely not to be absorbed by the exercise itself, but mostly to follow your mind in a specific direction, which is not, and I repeat, is not the case of Zazen. There is no direction. The only direction in Zazen, I told you this morning, posture, breathing, state of mind. And the state of mind, consider letting pass your thoughts. So this is how it became Zen. It's the exact same thing than the Buddha. We have eventually a different body, because it was said that when the Buddha was standing, he could touch his knees. So you can try and notice that you can't. without bending. So maybe he was looking a little weird, maybe we made a mistake in translation somewhere. Okay, this is it. Dhyana, Chana, Zen. And Zen stayed Zen because eventually in Occident we are not creative enough to find another word. So today everything is Zen. Okay? Like we arrive with Zen and instantly, exactly like at the time of the Buddha, a lot of sects think they know what it is about. So today your insurance is Zen, your saving account at the bank is Zen, your mobile phone provider abonnement is Zen, everything is Zen, you must stay Zen, stay Zen, stay Zen, stay Zen. Your retirement plan is Zen, everything today is Zen. Okay? If monks had patented, if Master Deshimaru, when he brought Zen to Occident, had patented the world, all the monks will be rich by now, which is not the case. Okay. So, as you understood, it's not that I claim. For me, it's just exactly like it is. The true Buddhism is transmitted Buddhism. Shakyamuni Buddha, Mahakasyapa, Ananda, Shonawashu, and all the big echo. For the little story, I am the 84th generation of disciples who got transmitted the Dharma to. Okay, so before me there is like 83 guys. My master, Master Deshimaru, Kodo Sawaki, Dogen, Bodhidharma, and the Buddha. So I want to talk a little bit about the famous masters. And eventually, I want to break some myths. So we say the Buddha said, the Buddha said, the Buddha said this, the Buddha said that. Only the people who have received the oral transmission from master to disciple actually know what has been transmitted, maybe with a little bit of variation. But people will claim, but what about this sutra, the Prajnaparamita? The Prajnaparamita, in the Prajnaparamita, it's written what the Buddha said. So be careful about that. And eventually you don't know that story. But where is the Prajnaparamita from? If we go back in the ancient time in India, we find that master called Nagarjuna. So the story of Nagarjuna is really uncommon. It starts with this master who's practicing in the mountain. And then a Naga comes. A Naga, in this time, was a snake god. Okay? And when this master gave the transmission, the monk ordination to that snake, maybe because there was nobody else, this snake took the form of a human being. And you can look on the web, Nagarjuna is always represented like the Gorgona, like the Meduse in the Greek stories. He has like snakes instead of his hairs. Okay, he wasn't even shaving them. Okay, so he has like snakes instead of his hairs. It was already a little bit weird. Okay, but this guy, Nagarjuna, during his practice of Zazen and absorption of himself beyond the limit that he had for himself, got in contact, relived the adventure, and re-witnessed the teachings of the Buddha, and eventually wrote them down. So it's actually what we call a channeling. What we know of the Prajnaparamita is a channeling which has been made hundreds of years later by a guy which was like a half snake, half human. So it's no use to directly believe that the Buddha said this or the Buddha said that. With the experience of Zazen, okay, the true experience of Zazen, what I explained you this morning, by doing the experience of Zazen, you do the exact same experience than the Buddha. You have an access inside of this absorption to the true form of what is the universal Dharma. Understand? You won't find more truth inside of this book or inside of any other book than you will find inside of yourself beyond the limit of what Christians have called the ego. Good. So, let's go a little bit back in time. Is the Buddha, Shakyamuni, the guy who invented it all? Is the Buddha the one who discovered Zazen? No. Himself said that before him there was many Buddhas. Depending on the traditions you are from, the Tibetans will recognize 28 Buddha of the past. We, Zen monks, recognize 6 Buddha of the past, and the 7th one is Shakyamuni Buddha. Understand? The transmission from master to disciple, from Buddha to Buddha, is like the karma. It has no beginning, no end. The fact that you actualize it and cut it and become a Buddha here and now is because you do the experience by yourself. And this is tremendously important. And this is why, knowing that, this is why you can handle to be awakened to that again and not let yourself fall inside of the trap of religion, Buddhism, or organized conditioning spirituality. Okay? Zazen is meant to set you free. Zazen is meant to lead you beyond what the conditioning has made of you. This is tremendously important. I wouldn't be here to tell you that if this was not the root of my faith. I wouldn't be here to play the monk explaining you bullshits about I don't know what. Okay, so I took some notes. So yes, this I said, in a way, Buddhism, understand, Buddhism does not exist. You've seen these quotes on Facebook. Buddha was not Buddhist. Jesus was not Christian. Mohammed was not a Muslim. Okay? Or Islamist, as we say today. These guys were doing the direct experience, invested by what some called God or the cosmic order. So the idea inside of Zazen. And this is what I've taught all the masters, without exception, from the most ancient Buddha to what I'm telling you today. It is about going beyond. Studying Zen is studying yourself. This is Master Dogen who said it. You want to study Zen? Study yourself. How do I study myself? You must abandon yourself, because the true essence of what you are is beyond what you are. And to abandon yourself is to receive the certification of all sentient beings. Good. Now, some funny stories. We have like famous masters. Okay, everybody knows the Shaolin monks. Shaolin monks are the descendant of Bodhidharma. You remember the guy who came from India to bring the dhyana in China. We say Bodhidharma is the inventor of the... Okay, I'm back in there. It's my mom who's calling me. Salut. So, mommy, you better watch the video than try to call me. Okay, so Bodhidharma, the inventor of Zen. Because maybe you don't know, but when we practice Zazen, we generally face the wall to not be disconcentrated. So Bodhidharma is a very famous guy. Not only because his disciples are kung fu masters and all that, but also because he was very iconoclast and hectic in his way to be. One good story. The guy is famous, and so the emperor wants to see him. He wants to receive the teaching from Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma comes inside, goes and sees the emperor and puts his shoe on his head. Puts his shoe on his head. And doesn't say nothing. Faces the emperor, and that was not really the thing to do, because if you would vex the emperor, you would get killed. But Bodhidharma, no fear. The shoe on the head. And the emperor asked, Sir, why do you have your shoe on your head? Bodhidharma answers, "What? I am here to teach you the true Dharma, and the only thing you ask me is why I have my shoe on my head? You just don't understand?" At this moment, the emperor got shocked. First of all, by the courage of Bodhidharma, because anybody else would have had his head cut. So the shoe of Bodhidharma is very famous. Okay. Anyway, the shoes are always, the sandals of a monk have always been famous in all the history. Already remember when I counted you the story of Dogen and Nyojo. Nyojo takes his shoe to smash the disciple and not the stick. Okay, he takes his shoe. Supposedly, Bodhidharma has been poisoned 7 times. Nobody was liking him in the temple of Shaolin. Also because he was looking like being eternal. He stayed so long in his cave before to be accepted inside of the temple. And in the temple, the old monks will just die one after each other, and Bodhidharma will stay healthy. The legend said Bodhidharma disappeared at the age of, I think, 167. And then one good day, a good guy, maybe a little bit important, went to the temple, came to the temple of Shaolin and asked the disciple, "I want to see Master Bodhidharma." And the disciple answered, "Oh, I am sorry to bring that bad news to you, but Master Bodhidharma passed away a month ago." And the guy answers, no, it's not possible. Not even a week ago, I saw him walking in the mountain." The disciple answered, "Are you sure it was him?" And the guy answered, yeah, I recognized him immediately because he had his kesa, his traditional robe on the head, and he had only one shoe. So everybody thinks it's weird in the temple, but they know Bodhidharma was incredible. So what do they decide to do? They decide to dig and get the coffin of Bodhidharma out of the ground. They open the coffin and they found just a shoe. So some people say, well, today that it's a legend. Of course it's a legend, but you can believe in legends. That Bodhidharma is still around and that eventually you can meet him. I wish you good luck on that. Another interesting story, and in this one I want to bring and introduce a little bit the talk that I will have later. The disciple of Bodhidharma, Eka. So one was a young disciple, and that a lot of energy needed to be inoculated in the Zen. The story was simple. The disciple of Bodhidharma showed up at the entrance of the cave and asked Bodhidharma if he could teach him the true Dharma. "Please teach me the way." Bodhidharma said no. Eventually didn't even answer and said, "Well, you're anyway not strong enough. No use." So we say that Eka, the story said that Eka cutted his arm to show his determination, that the Bodhidharma got, whoa, really impressive, and took him as a disciple. So if this is the story that people have counted you, again, I'm sorry if I'm going to shock my colleagues, it's bullshit, okay? It's complete bullshit. And now we know it because thanks to archaeology and studies and collaboration in between monks, we know, because in the time of China they would write these things. Okay, so what is the true story of Eka? Eka eventually was a soldier, military, and he had been wounded during a war to his arm, and the gangrena was starting to eat his arm. Eventually, Eka was a pensionary of the temple. He was already monk in the temple, and everybody, seeing his arm becoming more black and stinking, they were getting scared that they had to take care of him. So they just threw him out. Okay? And never ever in the story of temples and stuff, you have a lot of hard stories like this. I've seen myself, and I had to do it myself. Also, a lot of people get thrown out of the temples because they don't fit the religious profile, including myself. But me, I left. I didn't get thrown out. I left. Okay? So, what is the true story behind it? And to bring you to the way, I want to give you a koan. A koan is a deep interrogation under the form of a question. I will tell it to you. The importance is not to cut your arm. The importance is to know how you will cut the second one. This koan has been given to me by the master Shogetsu-sama from the Dojo Zen of Geneva, very active in Colombia. She's a woman Zen master. And the day she told that to me, I received it as a koan, and I needed many years before to get free of it and live an awakening, an enlightenment about that critical question. At the end, it becomes simple. And sorry if I bring you a little bit on the way, but once you've cut your first arm, the only way you can cut the second arm is to receive the help of someone else. Bodhidharma, seeing that he had got thrown out of the temple, seeing that he was fearing death because of the gangrene in his arm, and because Bodhidharma was also son of king, well educated in medicine, martial art, astronomy, astrology, and everything, he helped Eka to operate his arm and got impressed by his self-control and accept him as disciple. So this story of religious determination where you cut your arm to become the disciple of someone else, okay, it can pass. But the truth is that in between the master and the disciple, there is a lot of love, a lot of care, and a lot of compassion. They helped each other. Understand? Very good. Then we have, of course, other masters. Dogen was very famous. Dogen got his temple burned many times by the other Buddhists who were jealous that he had received the transmission. Because Dogen eventually was a little bit like his successors. I was saying, me, I have the true Buddhism. You, what you teach, me, I have the certification. And papers were very important in Japan. Me, I have the papers also. So I can prove. But in a way, it's just a paper. But I have this paper who prove that I've received the lineage. Understand? And it's admitted that only true masters have this certification. If you lose it, you're in trouble. So Dogen, I will post a little bit later on the thread of this day a movie called ZEN, The Life of Dogen. It's a really good movie, really sweet movie. Eventually the Japanese government, which has sponsored the movie, pushed a little bit in it for some propaganda, but it's really a good movie. And I really invite you to check that movie, okay? EQ, the master EQ. EQ was not at all what we call a common monk whenever he followed his study really well. But then EQ got invited to make the inauguration of a big temple by his co-disciple, bad guy. EQ he goes because he just wants to sleep one night in the warmth. And the second day is supposed to lead the entire ceremonies and a bit certify the dharma of his co-disciple, but he sleeps, and at the morning before the ceremony goes away, and his co-disciple like this. Eventually, in his old age, EQ fell in love for a very young girl and abandoned the practice, the formal practice of the temple, left his hair grow, and just lived a wonderful life with that young lady. Together they were very in love. So there is no Please don't let yourself believe that there is a formal way to be a master. That a master is like this, or a monk is like that, or they should be like this, or they should be like that. No. Like, if there is only one thing that monks and masters should, is to be free, healthy, and successful in what they do. Good. What else? Yes, another little story, funny, also to break a little bit your conditioning that you certainly got about Buddhism, where you don't do this, you don't do this, you don't do this, you don't do this. I like to teach to my disciple or those who want to okay to listen to my teaching. If you follow one precept for one rule, you have one liberty. One rule, one freedom. If you only follow the rules without being free, you didn't understand nothing. Understand? The Dalai Lama himself, whenever we are not at all from the same lineage, say that the rules, they are like a bridge to cross from one cliff to another one. You can walk on it. It can bend. The idea is just not to break it. But they will help you to go on the other side, the other shore of enlightenment, the true one, this one where you feel free and accomplished. Okay? So the story of Baso. Story of Baso is funny. Baso is practicing in the dojo. The Zazen time is finished, but Baso is still in the dojo. His master come in and say, oh Baso, hey, Zazen is finished now. Why you keep on practicing? Ah, because I want to become a Buddha. And the master of Baso respects and goes away. And goes to Samu. Samu is a very important part of the Zen practice. Samu is to help others to achieve things. Okay? So classically, you help in the temple, some work, a little bit like the good actions of the Boy Scout. You do something good for the others. Samu. This is what 8 billion people have to do if we want to save that planet. Samu. If everybody does Samu, c'est cool, it's cool. So, Baso, the master of Baso is on the roof of the temple and is rubbing the tiles. Yes, the tiles on the of the roof. And Baso looks for his master and see him rubbing the tile. Baso is surprised. And he says, Master, what are you doing? And the master answers, oh, I am rubbing this tile in order of producing a mirror. Huh? Baso says, but you will never succeed doing a mirror rubbing a tile. And the master answered, well, yeah, well, you believe you can become a Buddha practicing Zazen. So, understand? I've always been, and it's traditional almost, that Zen master break this conditioning of your mind. Of course, you will become a Buddha practicing Zazen. And if you rub fast enough and strong enough a tile, you'll make eventually a mirror with it. But that's not fundamentally the way it goes. The way it goes is only by abandoning body and mind and let the art of Zazen express itself by itself. This is the experience you can do, and this is truly Buddhism. Truly Zen. True Zen. Not the books. So Zen is not a religion. Zen is not a philosophy. Zen is not, what else? Zen is a way. Zazen is practice. Meditation, Zazen, Samu. But the true Buddhism is what will express out of it. Understand? Other masters. Oh yes, let's see Ananda. Ananda was the cousin of the Buddha. But before to talk about Ananda, I want to make you sensitive about one thing. The Buddha himself was not the complete image you imagine the Buddhist monks to be. When I talk loud or I break some conditioning, people they say to me, ah, ben for a monk, gna 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 gna, huh? And I'm like, yeah, well, how many monks you met in your life? Huh? Did you already went in a monastery? Yeah, but you met the monks of the monastery. Oh, the Buddha would have not done that. Did you already met the Buddha? Okay. The Buddha was not a sweet little complete guy. He was knowing eventually everything and having a perfect practice. But there is stories about the Buddha that are not directly reluctant. To not shock you too much, I won't go on it. But those of you, I don't know who's online, but eventually those of you who remember summer camps and retreats some years ago, remember the story of Nanda, the brother of Ananda, who got clearly stolen out of his family by the Buddha to become the guardian of the temple. And the story is not sweet at all. Okay, so there is some events, informations that have been sweetened for you to get interested into the true Buddhism. We don't want you to get interested in Buddhism. I want you to be interested in you, in what you truly are. And I'm not going to tell you who you truly are. I want you to do this experience by yourself or going beyond your conditioned self to discover it by yourself. This is what we call Buddhism. This is the Zen. And the essence of that technique, of that achievement, is the practice of Zazen and Samu. You may Zazen, Samu. I clean the bell. Okay? Good. Ananda, super sweet Ananda. Ananda, he didn't understand why the women, they couldn't come in the community. So he would bring women at night. Because he was beautiful and all the girls, they were falling in love for him. Even when the Buddha was sleeping, he even lifted the robe of the Buddha to show to the girls that the Buddha has a really, really small dick, even pulled inside because eventually, because of spiritual energy, but in the way he wanted to eventually just to show to his girlfriend that the Buddha she was so impressed with was having a little dick. This is blasphemy. That's what I say, I assume it. We must remove this paint, this edulcorant, the acesulfame K of the Buddhism. We must get rid of it. It's not useful anymore. It drowns the humanity in fantasies and phantasmagoric thinking and mind conditioning and religious mind conditioning. We don't need that anymore. It's the lion gate, brothers and sisters. We need to emancipate beyond this conditioning. Roar. Good. Fuyodokai. Fuyodokai. Fuyodokai, very good student. All these masters who have been shocking their mates have all of them been perfect disciples. Me too. Huh? Me too. I've made all my studies. I made maybe 2 mistakes. I borrowed the boots, the rain boots of my master to a guy that needed to do some work outside, and there was mud. And I didn't have boots to borrow him because I was the guardian of the temple. I borrowed him the boots of the master and told him, please, before, after, put them back in their place, else he's gonna cut my head. This dude, instead of putting them back to their place, he left them in front of the door. It rained and they were distracted, and my master discovered that. What happened to my boots? I borrowed them, and I got screamed at. But it's not a big mistake. I borrowed boots for a good action. And one time, another mistake I did, one time where we were served tea, I bring the master, normally the master receives the tea in first, but we see in the pot that the tea looks really weird. So I bring my bowl before my master and I say, I will taste it first then, if it looks this weird. My God. My God. He didn't say nothing, but I was flat. He just looked in my eyes, flat. Never ever. Okay, 2 mistakes. I've been a very, very good student. And it's because I've been a very good student of my master that now I have this faith and strength to bring some truth about Buddhism, about this practice, about Zen. I don't want you to believe in the bullshit that everybody sells you. Today, Zen is a bank account in the one you can feel happy in your comfortable zone. This is not it. This is not Zen. Zen is not being in a box in your comfortable zone. No. You must emancipate. Surrender yourself. Go beyond yourself. Abandon yourself to go beyond your religious, social mind conditioning. This, it makes me go to Fuyodokai. Just three more guys and then we take a break, we go on with something else. Fuyodokai. Fuyodokai also, very good disciple. Okay, perfect. Always well shaved, not a word. The master comes, smack him, thank you, smack him, thank you, do this. He does everything perfectly. Becomes master and then, of course, becomes an influent master because his teaching is strong. So the emperor wants to offer him a kesa. The kesa, here I wear just a rakusu, but we also have a robe that we put on the shoulder like this and covers us all. Very beautiful clothing. Normally a ground color like this one. So the emperor wants to give him a purple kesa, violet, purple. The master of Fuyodokai receives the kesa and looks at the emperor, say, what is that, man? Like with a clothes like this, even the monkeys in the forest are gonna laugh about me. Right? You can imagine why Fuyodokai ended up in a mountain far from the civilization, because eventually the entire army and followers of the emperor were behind him to make him swallow that insolence. Now I want to say something for the ladies. Eventually ladies are following this or will see this. Because we're always masters and guys and only big guys like, look, he's having a little dick and this kind of thing. No, this is not it. This is not it. Before I brought you the koan of Shogetsu-sama. Shogetsu-sama is a nun who's like really acting for our country, which is Colombia, acting for the indigenous, acting for them to be liberated of the pressure of our Occidental world. So she went beyond her own limits, received the transmission of the Dharma, and acted as a great bodhisattva. The one who asked me, the importance is not to cut your arm, it's to know how you will cut the second one. You remember? Okay. And the time of the Buddha, there was Renge Shiki. Renge Shiki had a much more determination than most of the monks and masters we hear about today. She's not in the books. Okay, you won't find the stories of Renge Shiki in the books. Eventually, some old books, but me, since I never opened the book, I don't know. I've received that story from my master. Renge Shiki is beautiful. And she wants to be part of the Sangha. She wants to follow the teachings of the Buddha because she has that great aspiration for the cosmic order and the beyond. But the Buddha and Ananda and the different disciples explain her that it's not possible and that anyway she's married and she needs to do what her husband says. That was the hard teaching of the Buddha. No. You are married. You need to have the consent of your husband if you want to become a nun. Sad, she goes back to her husband and behaved like a perfect wife, gave him children and took care of everything. Whenever the husband, we don't remember his name and we know why, okay? And not the best husband, that's all. But still, she committed. The Buddha said, I want you to do that. She does it. And then, when finally the children are grown up, that they left the house, she asks again to her husband, let me go, I want to follow the teaching of Buddha. I want to become a nun. I want to shave my head and become one of his disciples. And she was insisting so much, and so much, and so much, that in the end, the husband accepted. Or eventually he died. Okay? So she went back to the Buddha. She was old, but still, she was beautiful. Her entire being was full of light, full of beauty. And for the disciples of the Buddha, that was a distraction, because they will all fall in love for her. So the Buddha and the disciples of the Buddha said to her, no, they shaved her head, made her a nun. But they say, whenever we shave your head, you're still completely beautiful, and you are a distraction for the disciples. You cannot remain inside of the community. And told her to go away. So she took a knife and made herself full of cicatrices in her face. And came back and asked the Buddha, am I now ugly enough to follow your teaching? And then the Buddha himself understood that he had to educate his own disciple and not to try to change the perfect aspiration for the true spirit of Renge Shiki. Renge Shiki is an amazement. I like to say to my wife, my own wife, Haira-Osen, I like to say to my wife, you are like Renge Shiki. You have strong determination to practice, but you don't need to slaughter your face. You will be accepted. Now time has changed. Now we are 21st century, and now women can be masters. Women are the matriarch. Okay, this is cool also, not only guys. I want to end this present talk about the story of Zen and stories of master with Vimalakirti. Vimalakirti was living in the time of Buddha. Vimalakirti was not a monk, nor even a bodhisattva, never received the ordination. Vimalakirti was a guy pretty comfortable, having quite some money, big house, and slaves, and everything. So he was a lay practitioner, because he knew. Even the legend said that the Buddha was so perfect that he had to reject his alter ego, and the alter ego of the Buddha was Vimalakirti. So if there is eventually a text you want to go through, whenever it's complicated, go and read the Sutra of Vimalakirti, or read the Inner Revolution of Master Kosen, Modern Monks, it's called. The book is called Modern Monks. Read it and read the comments about the Sutra of Vimalakirti. A little anecdote, Vimalakirti is in his big house, everything is okay, fruit juice, slaves, hummingbirds around the house and everything. During that time, in the community of the Buddha, Manjusri, which is super intelligent and figured it all out, is asking too much question to the Buddha. And this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and that. The Buddha, after a moment, because now he understood he was an ordinary person also, like you and me, oh, maybe more like me, but no, he was a practitioner, okay? So Manjusri, at a little point, gets on his nerve, and he says to Manjusri, look, Manjusri, why don't you go and see Vimalakirti, which is in his house, all alone and sick? Vimalakirti, because he has great powers, magical powers, knows that the Buddha is sending him one of the bodhisattvas. They are working together, understand? They know each other. Maybe he's the brother, maybe he's his best friend, we don't know. So, with his magical powers, he transforms his entire house into a little cabin, little house, creepy, and puts himself in a creepy and dirty bed and plays the sick guy and removes everything. There is only the bed, a little blanket, and Vimalakirti inside playing the sick guy. And the Buddha said to Manjusri, yeah, go and bring him the good word, ask him how he is for me. maybe it's not as impressive as when I counted, but the Manjusri arrives in the house of Vimalakirti and sees Vimalakirti in the bed, and like, oh, I'm really sorry, you're sick. And Vimalakirti asks, what are you doing here? Well, you know, playing the whole grumpy guy. And Manjusri answers, the Buddha sent me to expose you the Dharma. Really sweet of the Buddha. And Manjusri looks around and sees that there is nothing, and he says, Vimalakirti, you have a chair? He asks him if he has a chair to sit. And Vimalakirti answers really sharply, why did you come here? To get a chair or to expose the Dharma? Boo! So even the lay people in Zen, and I have a good friend, maybe he's online, Yamasan. I have a friend, lay person, with very incisive mind. Sometimes we think he's crazy. Of course he is, everybody is. But in Zen we consider also that you don't need necessarily to become a monk. You don't need necessarily to go in the monastic orders or in the religious orders to be a great help for the diffusion of Dharma. Of course, if you want to become one day a Buddha or a patriarch or a master, there is no Buddha, no patriarch, no matriarch, no master who failed taking the form of a monk at a certain point. Voilà, dear auditors, dear people who are taking the time to listen to me and to what I want to share with you. Next appointment will be at 5, yes, if I'm not wrong, at 5. I will hold Taisho, satsang about prophecies, state of the world actually, spontaneous talking. Now that we maybe know a little bit more each other and you understand my style, I want to share with you my insights, how it's possible to make of this world a better world, and the help that the practice I'm vehiculating can help you and help all sentient beings. So if you are available, feel welcome. If you want, feel welcome to come back at 5 o'clock for that satsang Teisho about that subject. Thank you very much. Be blessed and go in peace. Bye-bye.